to the New Me podcast. I'm Mashav, your host, and today we're talking about cutting costs after divorce, but not in the way you might think. Before I get into the practical stuff, I need to tell you something. I didn't learn all this after divorce because I've always been frugal, price-conscious person. And it's just part of how I'm wired, thanks for my dad. But after the separation, that skill suddenly became very useful because I left a very comfortable life, financially speaking. So even though I was frugal, at my core, my ex was the opposite. So some of the things I got used to in our marriage were going out to expensive restaurants, Broadway shows, music concerts, traveling several times a year, getting babysitters a few times a week, having a weekly cleaner. And then once we separated, it was pretty easy for me to cut down on all these costs. I didn't eat out that much, and I cut down on music concerts and traveling, sticking only to some budget opportunities. And I got the cleaner to come only every other week, but I didn't give that up entirely. I also made a comeback to one hobby that I had before my marriage, social dancing. It's about $15-20 for every event, and you get live music and a whole new social circle. And then other money-saving adjustments came pretty easily to me as long as I could keep a few indulgences. But I found out that many women post-divorce that I talk to really struggle with this one because you have to become resourceful and even think creatively sometimes. Most of the women who go through divorce end up in a worse off financial situation. So cutting costs is one of the top priorities to sustain your own life, together with trying to raise your earnings. So I'm sharing this list because I know that even women who are used to living in a very comfortable life, and maybe especially those, will have the hardest time adjusting because it's a skill that you have to learn. What are we gonna cover today? In this episode, I'll explain why not every money-saving tip is worth doing. We'll talk about the 3 currencies you're actually managing after divorce: money, time, and energy. And I'll walk you through the expense cuts that are genuinely high return, the ones that save real money without making your life harder. And I'll share what I learned about this, including the mistakes I made and what I do differently. And by the end, you'll know which expenses are worth optimizing and which ones are just exhausting distractions. So after my separation, I had to get very clear about something. I wasn't just managing money anymore. I was managing 3 currencies: money, time, and energy. All 3 are limited, but all 3 matter. And the mistake most people make is trying to optimize for money while ignoring the other 2. A tactic that saves $50 but costs you 6 hours and stressful day, that's not a win. It's just expensive. A system that saves $200 a month but takes 20 minutes to set up once, it's pretty worth it. So the real question after divorce is not how do I save as much money as possible, but what is actually worth cutting, simplifying, or keeping. So how to tell if a saving is worth it. Here's a test I use to decide if a cost-cutting tactic is actually worth doing. It's testing 2 things. Part 1, does it save me at least X amount of dollars per hour of effort? So you can decide for yourself if it's $20, $50, $100, and then calculate if a task, for example, takes about 3 hours and it saves you $30, that's just $10 an hour. Your time is worth much more than that, especially when you're rebuilding your life. Then part 2, does this create more stability or more stress in your life? Some savings compound stress and other reduce it. An example for that would be, for me, I really get stressed out when I haggle a price down, and sometimes it's worth it, like renegotiating my rent, because it can be hundreds of dollars a month. But sometimes I find that it's really not worth the stress because the saving is just $20, $30 and it's not that meaningful to bring that stress into my life, especially now. So choose the ones that give you some breathing rooms and not just lower a few digits in your spreadsheet. So this is going to be different for each one, but I wanted to share a few ideas on what's a big ROI money saving categories. And the first category is the big structural expenses. These are all the expenses that move your monthly budget by hundreds of dollars. So this is where I want you to focus the most and first. And housing is the biggest lever. And it's really the biggest expense usually, so it deserves the most attention. But if you have a different biggest expense, maybe you focus on that one. But for me, housing is the most expensive, but moving to a cheaper place is not always the right answer right away, especially right after separation or divorce. And in my case, I did move eventually, but not immediately after separation because at the time there were already too many changes for my daughter and I didn't want to add another major change on top of everything else in our lives. So sometimes the right move is to stay put for a while, even if it's not the cheapest option because of the added stress. That said, once our lease ended, we did move to a smaller place that was closer to my parents and a better fit for our lives. It's still an expensive area, but it's worth it for me because I don't need a car. I'm close to my parents and their help with my daughter is worth a lot. And I have everything I need in a short walking distance. So the lesson wasn't never move. It's to decide to move when it actually makes sense and to a place that gives you the best combination of stability, support, and affordability. Second thing is the food, because food is one of the best places to save money without making your life miserable. But the trick here is not to become hyper frugal or spend all day shopping and cooking from scratch. The trick is to create a system, a food system, that makes it easy to eat well and pretty cheaply at home. For me, that means cooking in large batches and freezing extra portions, keeping ready-to-eat but healthy foods around like bread in the freezer, cheeses, salami, condiments, pickles, olives, breads on hand, making green smoothies in batches so that I don't have to do it every day, making a big, healthy banana bread with protein and fiber so that breakfast is a piece of cake. And mostly I'm getting all my groceries delivered because I don't want to use the corner store as it's much more expensive unless I have to get one or two things that I'm missing. And it's not just to cook more, it's make the healthy things the easiest to do. The goal is to be able to come up with a healthy meal in 10 minutes instead of ordering out or keeping a few frozen backup meals in your freezer. One of the biggest money-saving shifts after divorce is realizing how much of life can be secondhand. For clothes, obviously, but it goes way beyond that. Many times after divorce, we have to purchase a lot of things because we either split furniture or we need to adjust to a new place or we have to get a lot of things and it's a big expense. So I'm a huge believer in secondhand shopping. Most of my closet is thrifted or found on a stoop, recycled or pre-loved. And I love it not just because it saves money, because it's more interesting and it's sustainable. And after divorce, secondhand become even more powerful. It can mean getting your furniture from Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, getting some used household items. I found that there are local Instagram accounts that act as a third-party marketplace. So people post their free furniture that they've seen on the curve and they will deliver it to you for a small fee, which I think is great, and it worked in New York City. I don't know where you can find it other places. There are also delivery services that will bring pieces to your apartment for a flat fee, like Lug app and things like that. There are the Buy Nothing groups that you should definitely check out if you don't know that. It's been huge for me. And there's also something beautiful about the social side of this. I used to go to seasonal clothes swaps in my community. We'd meet at the park, bring bags of clothes that no longer fit or no longer suited for us, and each one of us would leave with a whole new wardrobe for the next season. And sometimes would also leave with a few new female friends from the neighborhood. We would actually help each other pick good fitting clothes, take pictures of each other, and it was really fun. Not only practical, but emotional too. I also organized a few clothes swapping evenings with friends in my place. I invited maybe 8 to 15 people, and everyone brought their clothes that they no longer wear, and I put out some appetizers and wine, and it turned into such a good night. And people could also bring their kids. I like that we could suggest each other and sell on a piece, a dress that you really love. Instead of just letting it go, you can promote it to one of your friends, and then you can wear your friend's item and knowing that you're wearing Samantha's dress or Chloe's pants or something like that. It kind of feels special. And then whatever is left just went to Goodwill. And I think that's the kind of saving that doesn't feel stingy. It feels communal and still generous. But I do get a few items new, especially like basic stuff and good shoes. So definitely doesn't have to be 100%. Beauty and personal care is another one. It's one area where the best saving usually come from adjusting and not eliminating altogether. Because many women going out of marriages are used to having their nails, spa treatment, cosmetics, facials, massages, personal trainers, hair salons, and highlights and all that every other week or once a month or whatever it is. And these expenses really adds up. But it's hard to just cut all of these because they're part of how you feel like yourself. So the question isn't, should I cut all of it? But it's which part are really worth it to me. So for me, I was never really hooked on most of those expenses. I rarely had my nails done or just the once a season hair appointment. But for me, it was my physical therapy that I was getting a private session once a week, helping me heal from an injury. And before separation, I also used to go for a medical massage every other week. So I didn't cut that completely. I adjusted. I found a more affordable physical therapist who was mostly covered by my insurance. It was in like a room that had other people in it, and they would kind of switch between their patients. But I could get 2 sessions a week, and that improved my situation without spending more money. And I also gradually reduced my massage appointments, and I still go about once a month or every other month. And it's one of my indulgence items. So that's the model that I like. Don't ask whether the whole category is good or bad, but think about how to reduce the frequency, or maybe find a friend that can help you do your nails, or can you use one of these color sets that you can get in Target. I use them and my hair comes out okay, but it's nothing fancy. Or which one of these expenses is really something that's essential for you? And it might be really important for your job, maybe, to have all your makeup and business clothes and things like that. And maybe some of that is not so important, like a personal trainer. And you can get a basic gym membership instead and get the personal trainer cut down to once a month instead of once a week, for example. So this is where the creativity and resourcefulness comes really handy. And then therapy, I think it's not an indulgence at all. It's one expense that I would not frame as optional or luxury, especially during divorce. In fact, I think that it's one of the most important places to spend wisely, but it doesn't mean that you should overpay. It means you can find a smarter version of support for your budget. For example, finding something that your insurance covers. I know that it's difficult, but I found a Zoom therapist that had a sliding scale option that I used for a while, and I used the BetterHelp app for some of this time, and it wasn't perfect, but I switched a few therapists until I found someone that was a good fit for me. Even if you get a really expensive therapist, it can be the wrong one for you. So having to go through this process takes time and energy anyway, right? So yes, therapy can be adapted to budget, but the goal is not to eliminate it because we want to have that inside our toolbox for part of our healing after divorce and during divorce. And then legal fees is one of the biggest expenses during divorce for me, for sure. And I think it was my biggest mistake where I most wish I had known better in advance because legal fees hit me hard. In retrospect, I should have taken the all-inclusive deal my lawyer suggested instead of an hourly pricing. But at the time, I thought that the process wouldn't last that long, and I was wrong. Mediation was also expensive, and we had 2 rounds, and that added quickly. So if I could give one practical tip here, it would be this: to save some kind of a legal buffer on the side. Put aside at least $10,000 if possible, just for that, so it doesn't stress you out to have to add that to your monthly budget, because it can cost a lot of money and escalate quickly. So take it into account. But also, this is one area where paying for quality can absolutely be worth it. So it's not a fun expense, but it could save you money and pain later by getting your divorce done properly. And then there are the hidden leaks. One of the highest ROI moves is simply killing unused subscriptions and other kind of leaks. And after separation, subscription creep is often worse than people realize. You may be paying for streaming platforms, apps, gym memberships, kids services, even duplicated accounts that made sense when you were a couple. So the best move is spending about an hour or 2 reviewing bank and credit card statements and listing every reoccurring charge, and then canceling or downgrading aggressively. And there are apps that can help you track and get better prices for utilities like mobile phone or internet services and other things. So you can have all of that organized at the same place and also reduced as much as possible. You might not need the highest subscription to some sort of app. Maybe you can downgrade. A lot can be done here, and it's one of the best DIY tasks because the savings are repeatable every month and it's a one-time effort. So it's definitely worth the time to have that organized. And if you want to make it even easier, you can set a calendar reminder to re-audit this every 6 to 12 months. So back to the one indulgence principle that I want you to keep in mind, and this is something that I care about a lot. I do think that it's important to keep 1 or 2 indulgences that make you feel luxe without spending a lot of money. And for me, like I said, it's the monthly massages, and I still go and do that. It's not the most expensive spa massages in the most luxury place, but just having that keeps me sane because I know that I'm not stingy on myself. And another thing that makes a lot of difference for me, even though it's kind of small, is that I keep really nice sheets. After separation, I got linen sheet set, and it feels like a luxury when I go to bed every night. Or it could be a fragrance that you love or something that's a more expensive item, but it makes you feel really good every single day. I would say that might be worth it, but don't have like 100 of these. Just choose something. It could be like a really good coffee maker or whatever you feel like can do the trick for you. As long as it's mindful and not just like mindless spending and you do do that intentionally, that makes sense and might even distract you from getting things that you don't really need because you know that you have those indulgences. You don't live in a scarcity mindset because you have the best coffee maker or whatever. So that way you don't need to deprive yourself of everything that feels good for you, and you just have to be clear about what actually matters. So the goal here is not to have zero extras. It's just to choose these consciously. Now, this is where a lot of saving advice gets exhausting. The over-optimizing the tiny stuff, because people will spend a huge amount of energy trying to save on tiny categories that don't meaningfully change the overall budget. So the better approach is to cut the big structural expenses, simplify recurring categories, and stop worrying so much about tiny, low-impact savings. It doesn't mean that small savings are useless. It means that your attention is limited and it also has a value. So if something takes a lot of energy and time and only saves you $12, it's probably not worth it. So don't go starting coupon clipping hobby if that's something you never did before, because this can quickly turn into a full-time job. And you also want to focus on increasing your earnings, not only decreasing your expenses. And you need attention, time, and energy for that too. Another thing to have in your mind is what's worth DIYing and what isn't, because not everything should be done by yourself. But also, you don't need to outsource every single thing. The real question is what is worth your time and your skills. For example, it may be worth DIYing some meal prepping, but it's probably wiser to outsource moving. If you need help with packing and doing the move itself, it may be worth automating bill payment, but maybe it's worth paying for the therapist, but choosing a more affordable one. It may be worth doing your own wardrobe cleanup and maybe selling a few items, but not spending weeks trying to resell every single item that you find in your house and you don't need anymore. I think that it's especially true after divorce because your life is already asking a lot of you and you don't need to prove that you can do everything the hard way. You only need to do what's sensible. And sometimes sensible means paying for help. Sometimes it's mean doing it yourself. Sometimes it means accepting that good enough is enough. And sometimes it means getting a friend's help or bartering with someone for a different skill that you have. Before we wrap up, you can't cut costs efficiently until you know your baseline. That's why I built the post-divorce financial checklist. It starts with a bare minimum calculator, which shows you your actual monthly essentials without any guesswork, and then the financial snapshot tool that maps where you're overextended and what needs attention first. And this is the clarity you need before you start slashing subscriptions or negotiating bills. 23 steps over 7 different phases after separation. You can find the link in the show notes. So let's recap what we covered today. After divorce, you're managing 3 currencies: money, time, and energy. Not every money saving tip is worth doing if it costs too much of the other 2. Housing is the biggest lever, but the best decision isn't always the cheapest one. It's the one that gives you stability, support, and affordability. Food savings work when you build a system that make the healthy thing the easiest one as well. Secondhand shopping becomes more powerful after divorce because you may be rebuilding from scratch, and it could be a big expense, a big one-time expense to buy everything new. For beauty and personal care, adjust rather than eliminate. Keep what matters to you, but reduce the frequency or find a cheaper alternative. Therapy is not an indulgent. It's a place to spend wisely, not cheaply. And legal fees can escalate fast. So if I could do it over, I'd save a buffer and take the all-inclusive deal. Kill the hidden leaks, unused subscriptions, duplicate accounts, recurring charges you forgot about. Keep one indulgence on purpose. Choose your extras consciously. Don't over-optimize tiny stuff. Your attention has value. And learn what's worth DIY and what isn't. You don't need to prove you can do everything the hard way. After divorce, there's often a temptation to become extremely frugal out of fear, but frugality is only useful if it improves your life. The best expense cuts are the ones that give you space. More money, more calm, more stability, more time, and more breathing room. That's why I don't believe in saving money everywhere. I believe in saving money where it actually counts. Thank you for listening. I would love to hear your thoughts and more good ROI money saving tips for after divorce in the comments if you have any. My name is Mashav and this was the New Me podcast. See you next time.